Hi everyone, it's Miss Dow, Miss Boyce. We are moving on to 9.5, which is the quadratic formula. Before we do the quadratic formula, we have one other thing to go over, which is called the discriminant. So we'll get into that in just a minute. But if you see on your notes, there is a do now. So let's give those a try. Remember our order of operations in the square root. So let's take a look at our first one, letter A, right? We have 6 squared minus 4 times 1 times 9. So what happens is the 6 squared gets done first, and then the negative 4 times 1 times 9 gets applied. So what it looks like is 36 minus 36, okay? And 36 minus 36 we know is 0, and the square root of 0 we know is 0. All right, let's try another one. Our second do now. It says 5 squared, again, so your 5 squared gets done first, so that's going to be 25, it's going to be written down here, minus, we have 4 times 1 times 4. You could look at it 2 different ways. You can look at it as negative 4 times 1 times 4, which is negative 16, or you can look at it as minus 4 times 1 times 4, which is just 16. Either way, it should be 25 minus 16. We get 9, and of course, we know that the square root of 9 is 3. And then let's take a look at our last do now. And so again, we take this first, the 7 squared, 49. 4 times 2 times 6 is 48. So 49 minus 48 becomes the square root of 1, and the square root of 1 we know is 1. Okay, so we do have to make sure we know our order of operations in order to move on. Okay, so here we go. What we're looking at today is the quadratic formula and what's called, like I said before, the discriminant. We'll go over that definition in just a minute. All right, so what the discriminant does, before we even figure out what our x values are, that's why we're using the quadratic formula, the discriminant is going to tell us the number of solutions, which is lovely. All right, so here we go. Here's our quadratic formula, and again, we'll get into that next time. This is the whole thing, whole big formula there, right? Okay, so let's talk about why we use the quadratic formula. We use the quadratic formula to solve for x in a quadratic equation. Okay, well, let's just review other ways that we solve a quadratic equation. By graphing, so where the graph crosses or touches the x-axis. By factoring, which we've kind of held off on for a little while. We did that in chapter 7. By square roots is what we just did. And then now we're moving into the quadratic formula. So again, these are all ways to solve a quadratic equation. Okay, so let's take a look. Before we, again, get into that big, huge formula, we're just going to look at the discriminant. And let's take a look down here. What the discriminant actually is just this little piece right here, the b squared minus 4ac part. And even more specifically, it's what's inside the radical of the quadratic equation. Again, here it is, that b squared minus 4ac. So what's inside the radical, that's going to tell us how many solutions we have to our equation. So let's take a look. If you can fill these in. The square root of a positive number has 2 solutions. Why 2 solutions? Because that's going to be our plus and minus. The square root of 0 is 0. And the square root of a negative number, we went over in that last section, that's not possible. If you put a square root of a negative number in your calculator, you get math error or domain error or math syntax error or something like that, which again just means it's no real solution. It's not allowed to happen. Okay. So let's look at example 1. So again, what I'm asking you in here for these examples is just tell me how many solutions there's going to be. Not what the solution is, because what the solution is the quadratic formula. We'll get to that next section. But right now, I just want to know how many solutions there are, okay? So first it says identify the values of a, b, and c. All right, so we have, remember, if there's nothing in front of the x squared, it's our invisible 1. The b always stands next to the x, and the 42, the c always stands alone. So here we go. Our a is 1, our b is 13, and our c is 42. Now it says use the discriminant to find the number of solutions. So here we go. Don't worry about that over there yet. B squared minus 4ac is what I'm using, right? It's just, again, what's under the radical, okay? So what I do is I plug in, I'm going to actually do an equation for this one. Here we go. I'm going to insert an equation. Okay, so watch what I do. I'm going to do Hold it. Okay, then we're going to do 13, because that's my b, squared minus, okay, minus 4 times a, which is 1, times c, which is 42. Remember, I'm getting these answers from what I put up here, or I'm getting these numbers from what I put in as my a, my b, and my c. Okay, so therefore I'm going to insert the equation into my smartboard here. Hold on, let me just move it down here. Okay, so now let's again evaluate just like we did the do now. So make sure you do it in a proper order. So 13 squared, let's jot that down. We know 13 squared is 169 minus, minus, and then let's do 4 times 1 times 42. And when you do 4 times 1 times 42, you get 168. Okay? And notice I'm not even putting my square root around it because I don't need it right now. You will for the quadratic formula, but for right now, you don't. And then the 169 minus 168 is 1. So let me just go back really quick to this guy. The square root of a positive number. So the discriminant is positive, which in this case it is. It's a positive 1. Then you have 2 solutions. Then you can write that down. I'm just going to circle 2 solutions. Okay? You can pause and go back anytime you need to here. So I'm going to go to the next one. So same thing. Let's identify the values of A, B, and C. So they're 4, 12, and 9. Okay? Let's plug in what we know. Again, we're plugging in b squared minus 4ac. So we know we're plugging in 12 squared. Oh, let me make my equation again. Hold on. So we're 12 squared minus 4 times a, which let me move that, times a, which we said was 4. That's 4a, 4 times a, times c, which we said was 9, right? So it's b squared minus 4ac. Okay? Okay, so when we do that, again, let's just do our order of operations correctly. We have 12 squared is 144. Something different. There we go. Okay, so 144 minus, oh, that keeps, sorry, peeps. Minus, and then when you do 4 times 9, you get 144 again. So in this case, my discriminant is 0, right? My discriminant is 0. Well, again, let's look back 2 pages ago to our notes. There I am. Let's go back to here, right? The square root of 0 is 0. So there is only one solution. Let me write that down here. Let me jot this down. One solution. So when the discriminant is 0, there is only one solution. So let's just circle that guy. And there we go. All right, let's keep it going. Last example. So again, let's jot down our A, B, and C. This one, just be careful because your B, look at it, it's a -8. So just be careful here. Your A is 1 because there's nothing in front of the x squared. That's an invisible 1. Your B is a -8 and the C is 10. All right, so same thing, but the only difference here is that when I put in, when I have a negative as my B, I actually put it in the parentheses. So watch. Let me get rid of that. So watch what I do. Because -8, when you're plugging in a negative, that negative kind of messes things up a little bit. So you have to put it in the parentheses. You're going to put the positive ones in the parentheses too, no problem. So right now I have a -8 in parentheses squared minus 4 times A, which is 1, there it is up here, times C, which is 10. Okay, there we go. And let's go through, sorry, here we go. Okay, let's go through again each of those. So a -8 squared, remember, is really a -8 times a -8. So if I have a -8 times a -8, I get a positive 64. Minus 4 times 1 times 10 is 40. So 64 minus 40, I should get 24. Again, this is a positive discriminant. So if I have a positive discriminant, that means I'm going to have two solutions. Okay, the next couple, there are 2 more tries. There are 2 tries. So pause it, try it, and then come back to me. Welcome back. Here we go. I put the workout. Take a look at it. Pause it if you need to. Notice what I got here. I got a negative 39, right? Because this would have been a 9 minus 48. 9 minus 48 is a negative 39. When you have a negative discriminant, you have no real solutions. You are not allowed to take that square root of a negative number. Okay, the second try, I get a positive 49 here. So now let me walk you through this one really quick because this one was a little bit different than what we did. If you notice, you got a 1, a negative 5 for B, and C is a negative 6. We haven't looked at one like that yet. So let's take a look at what I have. I have a negative 5 squared, which I know is a positive 25. Okay, now the next part, you could either look at it as minus a negative, or right away I see a negative times a negative. So right away I put that positive there because I know I don't want to mess it up. I'm going to put a positive, and now all I have to do is multiply my numbers. So in other words, you have a negative 4, or we already took care of the negative. So a 4 times a 1, we already took care of the negative, so just times 6. And you get 24. Okay, that's one way to look at it. The other way is to just say, okay, what's a negative 4 times a positive 1 times a negative 6? And it is a positive 24. Because you get a positive discriminant, 49, your answer is 2 solutions. Okay? All right, let's look at the last little bit. Try these first before, I know you just followed some of my answers, but give these a try first. All right, pause it, try it. You're just finding the discriminant of each of these examples. All right, pause it and come back to me. And welcome back. So you should have gotten the discriminant for letter A is 0, the discriminant for letter B is 84, and the discriminant for letter C is a negative, what do I get, negative 9? A negative 9, right. Okay, so how this correlates to the, or how this relates to the graphs is like this. Let me go to the graphs, right? Okay, so look, this number 1 crosses the, or touches the x-axis 1 time, right there, right? And number 2, it crosses the x-axis 2 times, here and here. I'm going to make that a little bit bigger. It crosses it once. And in number 3, it doesn't cross it at all. Look, there it is. It's not going to touch it ever because it's opening up and it's above the x-axis. Okay, so which one did you have one solution for? Let's look back really quick. There's one solution in letter A because it's 0. So letter A and number 1 go together. Letter A and number 1 go together because there's one solution. Okay, let's look at which one would have 2 solutions. Remember, it's got to be a positive number. All right, well, let's take a look at B. B is a positive discriminant. Therefore, there is 2 solutions. So we know that 2 is B because that has 2 solutions. And then number 3 is going to be the no solution. And we know that this has to be no solution because it's a negative discriminant. Okay, so this one matches with letter C. Look at that one in order. Okay, so and take a look back at these notes if you need to when you're doing your worksheets or you're doing your Google form or whatever you need to. And if you have any questions, just send us a text or remind. All right, thanks, guys.